Just going to actually make sure everything's working, so I'll wait for this to appear on my end. While we're waiting, on the off chance that this... Let's see, wait, okay, so I can see evidence that this is working. I don't know why FIFA doesn't have any audio, but again, that's really not the end of the world. I think actually it's fine at this stage that, you know, we're going to be listening to this guy. The one thing I'll say is that I'm in no mood to be streaming about the trans issue right now. The reason why is because I have been studying the book of Hebrews, and it is so dense. And I'm just in awe of how much longer this is taking than I wanted it to. And then every now and then I do come across stuff where I'm like, I don't know if I even understand this at all, whatever. And I have to like go on this massive rabbit hole. But like, portions of a verse. All right, okay, well, I got a comment, so this indicates that everything's fine. I'm just in awe of how much longer this is taking than I wanted. Awesome. All right. So that's good. Hello, Eagle Vision. It's wonderful to have you here. Right, so I guess we'll just jump into the video. We'll see how we do. Okay. Man, it's a long video. I can't wait until we're halfway.
Which, of course, was a retaliation on the idea that there was no scientific evidence to support conversion therapy, which sucker.
As always, so we're actually coming back to this after a little bit more of an absence than we've had in the past. I mean, that's just how it is. Like, basically, I could have streamed on Sunday, but I kind of decided that I had some other things that were, I don't want to say more important, but let's say things that had implications for further down the line in terms of my production schedule. So I was like, okay, let's prioritize that stuff. Anyway, so basically we're back after more of an absence than usual. And with that said, I'm just hoping... I did like click back a bit, so we're going to kind of overlap. We're just going to try and remember where we were. I think where we're at right now, actually, is there's a lot of stuff I don't really have anything to respond to. Let me just say hello to everyone here. And I do appreciate everyone being here. It is really... it's really nice. You know, like, that's the thing. I know you would think, considering that I've got a decent number of subscribers on my main channel, that I sort of just expect an audience and take it for granted, but I really don't. Like, every single time that I get, like, people commenting, I really appreciate it. Zombie Pup, hello. Oh, how was the concert? Goodness me, wow, you're really... so the concert was lovely. Let me think. Things about the concert. I found out, this is interesting. So I think I found out that there is a different version. I wish I could remember the carol. Because for those who don't know, in the UK, there's, so what is it? Oh, Little Town of Bethlehem. There is a different version in the UK compared to the US. The UK version goes, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie." And then it kind of like goes on for a bit, and then it goes, "But in thy dark street shineth an everlasting light." I might not be getting the exact words right, but you know, whatever. Whereas in the American version, it's, "Oh, little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie." And then the chorus is, "But in thy dark street shineth an everlasting light." So yeah, they're quite different tunes. But there was like one which I was confused by the tune, and I looked to my wife, and she, who is American, was confused by the tune too. And that makes me think that maybe this is a case where I am, as some people my age are, Americanized, and actually that was the classic British version. I just didn't know. But yeah, it was nice. It was in like an old church, which was nice, and my mum was in the concert, which I think I mentioned. She was like off to the side, and we couldn't actually see her, which was a little bit awkward. But yeah, that's really, you know, I mean. It was a really fun. And then we came back and we had Chinese like takeaway, delivery, whatever. And we got, I think because my parents are quite, let's say, loyal customers, I think they give my parents loads of extra stuff, which is fine. But genuinely, we didn't even eat a fifth of the food. We got like food that we thought could conceivably be enough for 6 people. Because it was me, my wife, my mum, my dad, my sister, and her fiance. 6 people. We got food that we're like, okay, yeah, this will be, I think we might have some leftovers, but this should be enough for 6 people. And yeah, we didn't even have a fifth. It was insane. Anyway, so yes. Captain Alexa, hello. I was in the middle of watching your Patreon video. Cool. So that's the, I assume the bonus Patreon video. Yeah, that's a fun one, right? The that Radio Times debate. Lovely. And then Sonar Bob. Wait, does that say Sonar Poop? I might say Sonar Poop. Yeah, you're obviously where your little thing is on the screen is a bit obscure. I just finished the Minecraft trans video on KC2. Yeah, wow. People are having such... Oh, everything's imploding on itself. Okay, now we're going to start making progress.
Complains about. This'll show him, Spitzer thought. Gay men don't have it easy. They just need to accept their maleness, and then their unwanted male attractions will decrease, he argued. He never stopped to think why it might be unwanted. Who could hope to change the world,
so,
I guess?
Again, obviously, because we're not talking about gay people, we're in fact talking about trans people, so-called. This is like, it's guilt by association and guilt by association on an unrelated topic. So yeah, just take some time to realize where we're at, is all I'll say there. Because yeah, you're not really being... You're kind of going very much off the rails as far as countering the gender critical position, or the, as you call it, transphobic position. Oh, wait a minute. I want a centre mid. Shall I have this guy? Yeah, let's have that guy. And then centre back is lovely. Striker's fine. I think I might switch out. Do I want the... Wait, hold on. Where's the... Wasn't there a... Or is he already... Oh, there. Okay, that's the other striker. Okay, go away. Cool. Right. I am happy with this. I could... You know what? Should I just bring on this terrible centre-back, even though I'm probably not going to lose him? But at least he's on the bench. All right.
The paper, of course, is, like, really bad. Kind of in the same way that the RGD paper is bad. There was an immediate backlash to it as well. Even the American Psychology Association issued a critique, because no matter how bad it is, it was still going to be used to justify conversion therapy. And of course, that's what happened. The ex-gay movement sprang on it like a rabbit in heat. But Zucker, having just taken over the journal Archives of Sexual Behavior, well, he kinda thought that Spitzer's paper fucked. So in 2003, Spitzer publishes the paper through Zucker's journal. This was done on the condition that the commentaries on the paper were also published, then mitigating the ever-irritating need to peer review. Ugh. Fast forward a decade and Spitzer finally realizes his mistake. Through the years, Spitzer apologized many times, accepting and understanding the critique, perhaps finally understanding that it isn't enough that homosexuality isn't a mental disorder. You also have to accept it as normal. However, he never actually officially retracted the paper. Why? Zucker wouldn't let him. Okay, Zucker might not be a direct proponent of gay conversion therapy.
Just to reaffirm what we've already said, whatever these guys' opinions are on the gay thing, it's just not relevant. Someone can be... I mean, just for the record, if someone's going to say... And to be fair, there are a lot of people. Like, every now and then I'll get comments in my audience from people who are like, yeah, you criticize the trans thing, but when are you going to start talking about how terrible the gays are? Now, I don't have any immediate plans to start talking about how terrible the gays are. I don't know if I really agree with that sentiment. But I will say this. Those people who are writing that comment, even if I don't agree with them on the gay thing, and even if they're clearly, homophobic, nonetheless, I would assume that they basically agree with my position on the trans issue. And yeah, I do think my position on the trans issue is good. Wait a minute. Okay, no, that's cool. Sorry, I was just thinking something, but it doesn't matter.
But he has a pretty good idea of how someone might argue for it.
If they set out specifically to prevent homosexuality at all, would probably do so with the view that a homosexual lifestyle in a basically unaccepting culture simply create unnecessary social difficulties.
He then uses the very same argument to explain why conversion therapy for transgender people is good, actually.
A fourth rationale in the treatment of cross-gender identification in children is the prevention of transsexualism in adulthood.
That could have been something incredible. I'll just say that, you know, that was almost a really solid start. Okay, wait.
There is little controversy in this rationale, given the emotional distress experienced by gender dysphoric adults.
And that's all that's available from Zucker's book online.
Okay, so whatever, I don't know. Basically, it sounds like this guy was against homosexuality, and then he also said that some of the reasons why people have been against homosexuality also apply to why people are against trans stuff. I guess that's what was being said there. But the issue that, sorry, and I know you're like, ooh, shouldn't you have just been listening? I'm not gonna lie, like I kind of was a little bit distracted, and I think ordinarily I've done a pretty good job at not just being totally distracted by the game I'm playing. But I think in that case, it was all a bit confusing, and there was the fact that, like, you know, as you kind of picked up, I didn't really care about the whole homosexuality thing. So when it switched to being about the trans issue, I wasn't really prepared for it. But what I was expecting to happen there was someone to point out that because he was talking about how like homosexuality is considered sort of a problem for society, and I thought he was going to mention the obvious thing to mention, which is that the fact homosexuality is considered a problem for society is why the trans thing is invented. And, you know, there are many examples of that. Obviously, in Iran, you have the fact that they think homosexuality is morally wrong, and that's putting it mildly. And therefore, they say, like, oh, but, you know, if you become trans, then that will fix everything. Obviously, in the case of Tavistock, there were parents who spoke about preferring that their child is trans instead of gay. And you know, you have people like Blair White, and, you know, it's crazy how often you hear these stories about, like, oh, I was a trans kid, and the story basically amounts to my parents hated the idea of me being in any way gender non-conforming, and obviously homosexuality applies to that. And then you have all of these like spiritual native, like, third gender categories, which are typically just about people who have non-standard gender performance, gender non-conformity, all that kind of stuff. So I was maybe thinking that would be mentioned, but that hasn't been mentioned. But I've mentioned it now because it is worth mentioning. Yeah, that was a really interesting start. I feel like I had so many like near misses there where I should have scored. But yeah, either this is a very bad team or I'm actually just getting better at this game.
Sadly, it's practically impossible to get your hands on, especially where I live, and I've seen them go for north of $100. Oh well. Luckily, I do have a copy. To be honest, the rest of the book doesn't provide a lot of new information. What it does, however, is allow us a real glimpse back in time. A couple of things sprang out to me. Zucker doesn't really believe in trans people. He doesn't think that a trans man is a man. Instead, to him, a trans man is a defective woman. To him, people can't change gender. They aren't the gender they say.
Okay. I see, again, like, that stuff sticking out to you is a bit weird, because really, like, it's kind of like, I don't know, like, the whole vibe, it feels like a Christian reading, like, a book by an atheist and being like, there's a few things that stuck out to me. First of all, this guy, you know, Richard Dawkins or whatever, he doesn't believe in God. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of, you know, 101 of there are people who don't agree with your point of view. You know, you shouldn't, it's kind of weird that you're surprised by that. But that's kind of funny, the fact he's just like, yeah, so I looked at this. You know, I made this video called Debunking Transphobia, where I'm, I guess, looking at people I consider to be transphobes who, like, disagree with me on this point. And I was, you know, something that stuck out to me is that one of the people I'm, like, responding to in that context doesn't believe that trans people exist. And it's like, well, yeah, what is that shouldn't be sticking out to you. That should kind of just have been expected with what you set out to do.
They are. Listen to this.
Some adolescents with gender identity disorder have an almost delusional sense that they really are the opposite sex, or can really be the opposite sex.
See, what I kind of enjoy about this, and I know he kind of mentioned like the whole antiquated thing, it's the fact that he, I almost wonder if he's not even realizing that the idea that trans was about sex is quite a novel thing. Like, I'm assuming based on the age, this book would be from a while ago. And as such, from his perspective, this seems like someone disagreeing with trans identity. But even just a decade ago, but certainly any more time ago than that, the idea of someone saying like, oh, this trans person actually thinks they are the opposite sex would be considered crazy even by other trans people, to their credit. You know, like it, because obviously, oh, I cannot let this happen. Oh, please don't tell me that's a foul, because it's not. Yeah, basically, it was one of those things, and there was almost a time, like I remember there are still people on who kind of reply to my videos or whatever, or videos I'm responding to, where they will kind of act as if the whole, oh, we change sex, trans people change sex thing is a straw man. And those would be trans activists. Trans activists say, well, you think, obviously we know we can't change sex. Yeah. So actually, what this guy's saying is, oh, isn't it crazy that there are some trans people who, beyond being trans, actually think they literally are biological males when they're biologically female, or biologically female when they're biologically male. Yeah, basically the same way that it would be significant if a child who's like playing some kind of dress up thing actually thinks they are the thing they're dressing up as. Everyone would think that was complete nonsense. But yeah, again, it just shows you how far the movement has kind of gone off the rails, that now it's considered like, oh, I can't believe this guy would say that there's some problem with the fact that they think they're the opposite sex. Because like that now, if you disagree, if you say, oh, some biological males think they're biological females, isn't that insane? You are criticizing trans identity. A few years ago, that was just you recognizing what trans identity actually is, supposedly, and not giving into a straw man.
But it struck me just how important this factoid is for his whole philosophy. If people can't become a man or a woman, if they aren't what they say they are, if trans people aren't real, then basically all treatments to prevent transition are valid. I've read quite a lot of books on
Okay, it's interesting that this guy said this, because like that's an incredible thing to admit, because what I always say is, I don't think that biological males can be women, I don't think biological females can be men, and therefore I do sometimes just ignore a lot of the other things people talk about, like the stuff around so-called trans healthcare and all that stuff, because I say, well, I don't really need to talk about the specifics of how we're going to engage with this idea, because it's total nonsense. Same way I'm not a Catholic, I don't need to worry about what liturgy we're going to have for Catholic services. Oh, that was really stupid of me. Oh, okay, I thought that was going to be a offside, and it wasn't, but I still missed. Anyway, yeah, I don't need to worry about that. And sometimes I feel like that's a bit of a cop-out. Because it's like, well, even if I think it's nonsense, maybe I should still care about it. But this guy's admitting here, he's saying, yeah, if the trans thing is in fact complete nonsense, then all of the concerns around being trans, all of the pro-trans arguments, all of the trans ideology concerns, they are just totally irrelevant. So yeah, I mean, if this guy's going to admit that, he better have a really strong argument for the claim that biological males can be women.
Pathology over the last 2 years, and there are usually two ways they're written: either empathetically or condescending. And Zucker's book is definitely not empathetic. He lists one example of a trans man who thought he had impregnated his girlfriend, and another example of a trans man who creates a penis held up by a wire, which he uses to fantasize of fellatio with his girlfriend. Like, yeah? They're kind of out there, but Zucker never tries to understand why these people feel the way they do. Obviously, you can't impregnate someone without sperm, but can't you understand that someone might just hope? And obviously,
oh my goodness, this is just like so lame. At the end of the day, you're allowed to, especially as like a doctor, I don't know, like what is this? It's just so stupid to be like, oh, I can't believe this scientist is just only focusing on the fact these people had these bizarre beliefs. Shouldn't he have been sat there, like, being empathetic, asking them why they feel that way? And it's like, I don't know, like, the whole thing, it just feels very emotionally manipulative. Because it's like, who's to say that there isn't a consideration of why these people feel this way, the emotional reasons for that? Maybe it's just not relevant to the discipline. Also, maybe you don't care, and to be honest, you know, you don't have to be committed to some emotional appreciation for why these people believe these nonsense ideas. And also, you just like were focusing on the fact that whether or not biological males can actually be women is the most important question. And so far, the only thing you've kind of said relevant to that is, well, maybe they're just hoping they're women, which seems to be tantamount to you admitting that actually they're not. So, or obviously in this case, you're talking about trans-identified females, so they're not men. But yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to hear any actual argument for the claim biological males can be women or biological females can be men.
A DIY dildo isn't a penis, but neither are any other dildos. Sex isn't just about...
Okay. Okay, yeah, you are right there. To be fair, women who use dildos generally don't believe they're actually penises. But the other thing is, it's just a little bit more strange to be using a DIY dildo. But yeah, you are right. And to be fair, somebody who is like a biological female who is absolutely convinced that she's a man, I guess it's not really that surprising that she might do something like that. So that's probably not really that crazy, but whatever. The important thing is your whole emotional thing about, why aren't you just thinking more about their feelings and stuff? It's just not a good argument.
Procreation or physical sensation, right? You don't use a strap-on because you imagine the dildo feels really good. Maybe you like dominating. Maybe you like simulating a man. Maybe you just like watching your partner squirm.
Shut up. Just what are you talking about? None of this is relevant. It's just a total, like, it's just so obvious that this is not an art, because we're talking about, can a biological female be a man? Coming up with all of the different reasons why a biological female might use a dildo, that's not an argument. That's a funny face I paused on. That's a funny face for this guy to be paused on as I'm ranting at him about why is he trying to, like, but yeah, like, that's the thing. And you can talk, it kind of reminds me of, so obviously I got that response literally uploaded today from that guy talking about, like, I did that video on Judith Butler, and he's kind of said, oh, you didn't really understand it. But like, I watched like a portion of his video, and a lot of it is just like, oh, the thing is, Judith Butler, what she's really talking about is how interesting, like, biological sex is, and how interesting gender is, and how gender's constructed, and blah, 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 blah. Thing is, everyone already knows that. There's not really that much to be said for just sitting there saying, like, oh, this is interesting. Isn't it interesting that gender's got all these features? Isn't it interesting all the reasons why a woman might use a dildo? And it's like, okay, maybe that is interesting to you, but when there's a lot of stuff going on that's basically about an argument that people are having, just saying, oh, that's him, yes, yeah, just saying, like, oh, but isn't all of this other stuff interesting? That you can't do that. And again, like, just imagine a religion analogy. If I'm asking, why do you believe that this religion is true, telling me all of the interesting things about your religion, all the little factoids, that's not relevant. It's just stupid.
I don't know. Sucker just whooped it to the side.
You're right. That actually could be a good thumbnail. You're right. Oh, this could also be a good thumbnail. We're just we're 2 for 2 in terms of good thumbnails right now.
I simply cannot comprehend simulacra. This isn't natural, and you are delusional.
Lastly,
look, I'll say this because I'm all about giving credit where it's due. I think, like, actually, yeah, finding it super weird that, like, it's not that shocking that a trans-identified female would simulate having a penis. Like, that actually is not something I struggle to understand. And being really confused by that doesn't really make much sense because it's kind of, well, obviously. It's kind of got the same vibe as this guy being really confused about the fact there are people who disagree with trans identity. But yeah, that is a point. It's a point that, yeah, it is a bit weird to act as if you don't understand it, but it doesn't really function as any sort of argument.
The psychotic adolescent may present with the statement that he or she is of the opposite sex. Such statements are typically part of the delusional system and generally cease with the treatment of the psychosis.
This book is so focused on treating the child to rid them of cross-dressing behavior that it never pauses and imagines a world where these children can feel welcome. Only the world sucker himself inhabits, where the children are either repaired or failures.
At least 3 goals. Elimination of peer...
Goodness me, no. Yeah, like, at the end of the day, this guy... I think you shouldn't be that surprised that a lot of people here... that there are biological males who imagine themselves to be women, biological females who imagine themselves to be men, and think to themselves, oh, how are we going to cure this? Because to most people, it's actually just a very natural conclusion. The same way we would think that if a human being believes they're an attack helicopter, we would all intuitively understand this is something that needs to be treated like a psychotic issue, not a how do we accept these, encourage people to accept themselves as they are and just be whoever they want to be. Right, I'm going to get some chamomile tea, only because it's usually the time I ordinarily have it, and we've got the highlight reel playing, so you guys can watch the highlight reel while I go get my tea. Also, I don't know, I feel like, that's my, what's the word, my undercarriage, is that, I don't know, what's it called when you got a little bit of your big fat disgusting stomach sticking out. I do like this jumper. What was I going to say? I feel just a little bit, my tummy feels a little bit poorly. Just a little bit. Not like an horrendous amount, but I feel like I need something to settle it. Hello, everybody. I come from Germany. Have you ever seen the? Has anyone ever seen that video of I'm just gonna have to play it because I can't be bothered to make it so you guys can hear it, but it's really funny. So it's We don't do that in Germany. That's the whole meme. Yeah, here it is. Wait. This is how I imagine this guy, essentially. Wait, so...
Why don't you have state healthcare like we do in Germany? Why are you religious? We are not like that in Germany. Why do you let people be patriotic? We don't do that in Germany. Why do you let people have guns? We don't do that in Germany. Why don't you make buildings from brick like we do in Germany? Why don't you have trains like we do in Germany? Why don't you have state healthcare like we do in Germany? Why are you religious? We are not like that in Germany.
Oh, wait, sorry, it's just repeating.
Why do you let...
There we go, yeah. So that's... I mean, that's not really what this guy... I don't even know if this guy's German. He's some kind of, like... He's some kind of Germanic. I think that's fair to say. But yeah. Yeah, it's just... Why don't you respect trans people? We're not like that in Germany.
Ostracism in childhood, treatment of other psychopathology, and the prevention of transsexualism in adulthood are so obviously clinically valid and consistent with the ethics of our time that they constitute sufficient justification for therapeutic intervention.
The book makes me feel as if I'm standing behind a pane of glass to inspect these children as if they're some kind of zoo animal. It's almost David Attenborough-esque. Except David understands that nature is...
Oh my goodness. Like, it's like this guy just doesn't understand the fact that human beings can sit there and talk about, like, scientists can talk about other humans as if they need to be studied. Like, you can't always just be coddling people, and every single time you're describing real human phenomena, you have to use this language. Sorry, phenomena. You have to be using this, like, really sensitive language of, oh, well, you know, this person who's very valid, and, you know, they have all of these feelings, and they've got a rich life, and blah 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 blah. Here's my... You can't be making that clarification every single time you engage in something. Anyway, let's do a bit of a scout report. Let's make an offer for this scout man. Yeah, I need a left mid. Andre Green. Aston Villa. This guy's going to cost me £1 billion. Approach Aston Villa to buy. There is no way that I'm going to be able to buy this guy. Recommended transfer budget. Oh, wait, so... He's probably going for a sum between 989,000 and... Okay, so that was a waste of time. I don't think we're going to be able to buy a guy for that much money. Whoops. So that was a giant waste. I think that's an AI voice. Yeah, I think it is an AI voice. But yeah, I'm really annoyed. I just wasted my scouting resources on. Okay, view scout report. What about this guy? Sergio Garcia. Approach Cordoba? Do you think CF stands for Club Football? A value of 45,000. Let's offer 40,000. Why not? That's a fair deal. Or 36,000. Let's try that. Submit offer. Cool. Who is... Why didn't I just... didn't I just make an offer? Whatever. Okay, anyway. Let's get back into the game.
Weird, and it's not designed to be comprehensible to mankind.
4-year-old might say that he's a dog. Do you go out and buy dog food?
So with the ultimate goal of eliminating transgender behavior, Zucker set out to find any trace of origin and was seemingly willing to practice any treatment if it meant that these children would grow up normal. And this ties in with the second point. Zucker mentions social constructionists a couple of times. You know, people who believe society is replicated and understood through interactions and relations and not just heretic genetics.
Social constructionists, the contemporary gadflies of psychiatry, are disdainful of the notion of intrapersonal distress, except as a response to social oppression. In their view, one can never be the architect of one's own misery.
Suddenly, all his theorizing made so much sense. I believe that soccer believes that psychiatry is a pure science with certain factually right and wrong answers. If there's a problem, there must also be a root to that problem, and if we haven't found it, it's just because we haven't dug deep enough.
It really does have to be based on the... it has to be actually based on some science, otherwise you are neglecting people. You're not treating them right. So, while it's not necessarily a totally simple science, in the same sense you could say other sciences are scientific, there is still an obligation for it to be accurate, for it to consider basic realities. Okay, please revise your... What am I doing? Okay. Oh, squad role. Let's say crucial first team player. Okay, there we go. Can I can't, like... Okay, there's only one option, which is 1,250. Right. Yeah, I'm going to give him a bonus goal. A bonus per goal. Because why would I? I could, but I don't want it. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I should have made... I didn't actually pay attention to what was happening. So, now I might get him.
A person is made up of pure genetics and decisions, an ultra-rational individual organism. And to that I say...
No, yeah, so this... Here's the thing. This is why you're being stupid. You're... Yeah. The problem with this is that it actually... We're not talking here about whether people are purely rational. We're talking about whether reality is reality. You know, it's kind of like if someone says, I can fly, and I say, no, you can't. You go, okay, you Vulcan. It really reminds me of... I actually rewatched this video recently. It's by a trans-identified male, so this just shows that I'm not a bigot. There's this video I really enjoy by this YouTuber called JXy, and it's in response to Patrick Willems. And Patrick Willems has this video about like plot holes. The video is called Shut Up About Plot Holes. And essentially, his entire argument relies on assuming that the only alternative to a movie being riddled with plot holes that make basically give it no internal logic would be that the movie is just 100% logical and nobody ever has any emotions. He basically says, if everybody was logical in the movie and there were never any plot holes, which, by the way, people acting illogically isn't a plot hole because it's not, it makes sense that sometimes people act illogically. But anyway, he says, if there were no plot holes in movies, everybody would be acting like Vulcans. They would never have any emotions. They would just be completely like, oh, I see what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. But what JXE points out, which I think is really, really good, is that obviously Spock is a character in Star Trek. He acts logically, and he's a Vulcan. But do you know who else acts logically in Star Trek? Everyone. Captain Picard is a logical person. He, and there are very few, and look, I'm not like a massive Trekkie, but there are very few episodes of Star Trek and zero good episodes that are entirely advanced by the characters just making illogical decisions. If there was an episode of Star Trek where Picard starts off by being like, "Hey everyone, let's blow up the ship's engines for fun. Let's turn off the life support system and see who dies first." If that was an episode, it would be a bad episode because it's him acting illogically. But the point is, just because he's acting logically doesn't mean he's acting like a Vulcan. Emotions do not contradict logic. And I bring all of this up because I think it's a perfect analogy to what this guy's basically arguing, which is if you think that claims that you're making about reality actually have to cohere with reality and have some kind of logic to them, that therefore you're just saying that human beings are robots, that they don't have any sort of unique, complex, intricate experiences, and that's just not true. That's the issue, basically. I recognize that trans people can be all like weird and wonderful in a perfectly good way, and that's fine. But that's not going to have anything to do with whether I then think that they are correct about reality. Obviously.
No, maybe take a single course in sociology like I did. But really, it explains so much of the book. If a child is a result of some formula, the next logical step to understand why the child is the way it is to look to its roots. And to look into epigenetics, etiology, and associated psychopathology. But the parents, and especially the mother, is a part of the problem. If they even dare to tolerate that the child cross-dresses. GID is seen as a rejection of a real identity, a rejection of real biology, and an escape into a fantasy land, into a world of constructions. So when the parents tolerate or even accept their child's behavior, this book sees it as playing into the delusion, being part of the problem.
I will never stop noting how insane it is that this guy literally acknowledged, hey, you know, if someone recognizes or believes that trans identity is complete nonsense, then that it does make sense that they consider so much of the rest of this discussion and these defenses of trans ideology to be illegitimate. And yet he hasn't actually offered up any commentary on that question of like whether these central claims of trans ideology are actually nonsense. Instead, he's just talking about this one individual's guy's particular attitude towards what is causing trans identity, with his focus being on the fact, oh, this guy thinks that trans identity is caused by the parents behaving a certain way, and that's a problem. But, well, that's not an argument, right? I mean, it is, again, I will use his own logic against him. If, like he's already admitted, someone disagrees with the claim that biological males can be women and biological, biological females can be men, then of course it is a problem to tell children something, to indulge children in something that is complete nonsense. In a way, depending, look, if you want to like tell your kids Santa exists for fun, that's fine. Okay, you can have like a little bit of fantasy with your kids, where you got a little bit of like silly magic and stuff. But obviously saying, oh, you're actually in reality a boy and not a girl, that's not a fun bit of magic. That's quite a dangerous falsehood to be telling kids.
Of course, Zucker's approach was never watchful waiting. It was active discouragement and punishment for deviant and perverse tendencies, and affirmation of biologically accepted sex-type behavior. And on the journey to find any probable reason for a cause, it led these researchers down some weird fucking paths. Because they had come to realize just how attractive some of these children with gender identity disorder were. And
goodness me, look, I don't even like want to listen to this, because it's like, first of all, I've never even heard of this guy, this Rutger guy. This sounds like this guy found a bunch of people, and now that's like he was like, oh, look, I found it. But of course, it's really hard to ignore the fact that John Money is the famous guy who was really creepy in his relationship with kids, and he is the person who literally coined the phrase gender identity. Like that phrase that every single trans person uses, that is kind of the entire foundation of their ideology, that was coined by John Money, who was obsessed with this idea that kids have gender identity, and he was interested in the way they act out that gender identity. And yes, it was very creepy. And even then, like, I don't really bring that up that much, because again, it is kind of a genetic fallacy, just because that's where it came from. But at least you can say, like, that's a significant thing. Like, that makes John Money very significant to the trans movement in an objective sense, that he coined one of the most common terms used in the trans movement. But yeah, what this guy's bringing up, I really should have scored there, is totally irrelevant. Or not totally, but like that he's not given any reason to think that this particular individual, who, yeah, maybe is really creepy, has anything particularly to do with the gender critical movement, the anti-trans movement, that makes like him like this more significant than just some random person.
This must be a sign of something, right? This was based on Robert Stoller's work from the 1960s, a previous well-known psychiatrist. Stoller's theory goes something like this. It's a 3-generational formula. A mother is negligent towards her daughter. The daughter experiences strong love from her father, but only very briefly. And this cocktail encourages the daughter to identify with maleness. This, of course, makes her bisexual.
Yeah. So here, like, the whole thing is this obsession over, like, an individual's specific explanation for why people are trans. And I do kind of understand that as an argument. Like, in that you could say, well, if you're going to say an idea is false, what is your alternative explanation for why people come up with it? You know, what is your alternative explanation for why biological males say they are women if the answer isn't that they actually are? But the problem is, in this case, that's not really a difficult question to answer, because this is very clearly an idea that's very tied up with a lot of specific psychological conceptions of things people might have. And, you know, like the kind of alternative, so obviously like a good analogy to this would be people kind of say, well, you know, if you're not a Christian, why do you think that loads of people came up with this idea that Jesus Christ was crucified? And ultimately, you know, you don't have to come up with an explanation for that, but it's a question people ask. You know, if you're saying, well, it's not because he actually was, what is your explanation for why people came? And usually people will actually go to the effort of saying, well, I think it was like a legend, or, you know, whatever. Like, people will usually try and come up with some explanation for why they think people believe differently. And in that sense, you know, it is worth coming up with some kind of explanation for why people disagree, or sorry, why people claim to be trans. But the answer is, oh, that was a very tight offside. The answer is quite simple, because we live in this very strange gendered society where people do have all sorts of notions of how men and women should behave. And because of that, it makes a lot of sense that they would start saying, oh, well, I'm not behaving the right way, so I'm going to be, you know, a woman instead of a man, or whatever. So we actually do have a pretty just obvious explanation. And like, this guy who came up with all of these specific theories of like, oh no, it's to do with this exact precise relationship between the mum and the father, that's just not necessary to criticize trans ideology. And therefore, it really doesn't matter if this one guy said that, and it doesn't matter if you can like show that that's nonsense, or if you're actually even just going to expect us to take it for granted that it's nonsense without even making any effort to refute it, which is probably what you're going to do. But to be honest, in that case, like, fine, do that if you want, because I don't have any reason to defend this. So yeah, fine. If you want to just say it's nonsense, fine, it can be nonsense. It doesn't really matter, because one specific guy's explanation for why people claim to be trans isn't that important in the question of whether being trans is actually a thing.
When the bisexual daughter grows up and becomes a mother herself, her husband becomes absent. Of course, this absence of the father makes her want to feminize the phallus of her beautiful son. And therefore, the son cross-dresses. And boy, oh boy, these researchers just couldn't help but notice just how beautiful those children were. Maybe this sounds crazy, but this was the state of trans research before the turn of the millennia. So, Zucker set out to test it, because what if these children were transgender because they were too beautiful to be boys? A group of boys with an average age of 8.1 years had pictures taken of them from the chest up and graded on how cute, pretty, attractive and beautiful they were. They found that those with gender identity disorder scored higher on attractiveness.
I will say, there is like some point in doing this. There's like a line you have to draw. Like, if you're getting really into it, that's creepy. But in some sense, recognizing that some children might be considered more attractive than other children could have research value. Like, if you want to talk about how children are treated, saying, oh, is this child considered more cute? That's definitely something you want to look into. In some context, maybe even get into a question of like, is this child considered attractive? It's a bit weird, because like, I'm just going to say this, I personally don't really understand. Like, I can understand saying a child is cute. I don't really know like what exactly saying a child is like. I mean, I don't know. Like with pretty, for example, I guess you just say like a symmetrical face and all that kind of, you know, like the standard things that people bring up when they talk about it being objective. And yeah, I don't know, maybe in that sense you could say, yeah, this kid is pretty in that like everything's in the right place. But yeah, whatever. The thing is, this sounds like I'm not interested in defending this. One, because it's totally irrelevant what these random researchers did. Two, because I think it probably is actually kind of weird. But I just want to say there are some contexts where actually talking about the idea that people, I don't know. Well, again, I mean, if you want to do research into pedophiles, which there's probably important reasons why you'd want to do research into pedophiles, maybe you'd have to have some uncomfortable conversations about the mentality of said pedophiles. So there are like contexts where this makes sense, but that's just something I'm inclined to point out for the sake of fairness.
The more feminine the kids were, the hotter, apparently. So, of course, they wanted to do this with little girls as well. But this one's different. The researchers took 12 girls with the DSM-3 diagnosis of gender identity disorder, 10 normal girls as a control group, and a further 12 as a clinical control group. But if the clinical control group weren't normal and they weren't trans, what were they? Of these last 12, 11 of them, and I cannot stress how fucked up this is,
were taken from a pool of girls referred to a child protection agency because they had been either sexually abused or had experienced physical abuse or emotional neglect.
The girls were on average 6.
So, okay, hold a minute. So why is that fucked? Because it sounds like, I'm just thinking, is the point of this going to be that they looked at these specific girls because they wanted to see whether or not there were like commonalities between the mentality of trans-identified females and females who've been victims of abuse? If so, that's an incredibly important thing to establish and not at all fucked up to actually explore. Like, I don't know, isn't that something worth looking into? What are the physical effects of trauma and or the psychological effects, and comparing that to other kind of mentalities people might have that could be could correlate with that? Isn't that something that's worth looking into? I don't see why that's fucked up at all.
6.5 years old.
With parental consent at the time of assessment, a colored photograph was taken of each girl, usually from the chest up.
Now,
the
to be fair, I don't know, if they like then start saying like how attractive these kids are, that's weird. Again, I don't have any reason to defend these people, these random researchers. No reason at all. I don't care. I'm only pointing out what I think is a legitimate thing to say, which is that there could be some... And let's just say this. I don't really have much confidence this guy isn't kind of misrepresenting things, although I also don't have much confidence that scientists wouldn't be pretty messed up. So it's kind of, take your pick. But yeah, basically, I'm just going to point out what I can infer based on what this guy has said.
Instructed to smile. Subsequent photographs showed that only 3 girls...
I think John Money was doing stuff before that though, but he didn't make the team. Yeah. Oh, let's actually bring on some subs because I'm kind of upset for my sub guys. Oop, pardon me, having a little burp. Disgusting, sickening. Bring on this left mid. I guess we'll just replace our captain. And then we'll just bring on a new centre-back. Oh, wait, let's bring on our left-back to replace Tutonda. Lovely. Okay.
Did not smile.
Just like the previous study, the girls needed to be scored on how attractive they were.
Okay,
a group of 31 men
weird.
and women with an average age of 21.6 years were instructed to rate the girls on a 5-point scale of being attractive, beautiful, cute, pretty, and ugly. I wonder what they found. The girls referred to the gender clinic were apparently uglier than the rest, but the clinical control group of sexual abuse victims were on average more attractive, beautiful, cute.
That is actually, like, the thing is, again, it's messed up, but assuming this was like a blind trial or whatever, that is actually interesting information. That even, because I'm going to assume the people who were like if you just bring like a random group of people in, I don't know, it's kind of interesting to think about why would that have been the case, that a random group of people all said, oh, these people are the more attractive. I don't know. It's weird, but it is actually kind of interesting.
And pretty than the rest. Also, older girls scored worse.
That is interesting.
Chapter 11. Richard Green.
And soccer isn't even in the French part of Canada. Shaking my damn head. A fun fact, for some reason Soccer's book decides to leave out that some of the girls were abuse victims. But no matter how disgusting I feel that study was, of
Am
course
I,
it doesn't
am I
invalidate...
like right about like we're on like some level of guilt by association here? Like it wasn't is Zucker? I don't even know who Zucker is, but was he even the one who like did this research, or did he just like reference it? Because that's obviously a significant like I don't know how many degrees of separation we are currently removed from anyone who actually matters, but it's at least a few.
The whole body of work of Zucker and his colleagues. Also, he's known for...
And obviously, what we're definitely many degrees removed from is any question about whether or not trans ideology is actually correct, whether trans identity is making any correct claims about reality, because obviously none of this has anything to do with that. Like the amount, like how irrelevant this is kind of crazy. Oh, goodness me. Okay, I thought I was going to concede.
being quite litigious. So, no, it's not that all these men, Zucker in the studies, Richard Green in his book, or Stoller in the transsexual experiment, all for some inexplicable reason comment again and again on the extreme attractiveness of the boys with gender identity disorder. That makes me discredit them. No, it's their whole body of work almost.
Okay, well, in that case, stop, like, in a way, kind of stop mentioning it, because it just comes across very much like poisoning the well, especially since I haven't heard of most of these people. So why are you, like, except for Blanchard? Am I like, sorry, I feel like I'm just completely forgetting who the people, what's it called? The AGP guy. But wasn't he talking about, like, adults, not children? So yeah, as for all these, like, pedo people you've mentioned, none of them I've even heard of.
Succinctly, their base philosophy that makes me discredit them, and in
okay, so
particular,
actually,
Zucker.
okay,
I'm not even
so actually attack their philosophy then. You can't do this. You can't say, it's just so disingenuous to, like, spend all this time talking about this research, which, I don't know, yeah, sounds pretty creepy. Oh wait, is that the match over? That's the match over. I did not realize that. Yeah, okay, maybe sounds pretty creepy, but you're not, that's not an argument. And then to be like, oh, but this isn't why I discredit them. All right, well then, you know, honestly, why did you bring it up? In a way, I kind of get, all right, like, if they're doing some major pedo stuff, if J.K. Rowling was a pedophile, I could understand bringing this up. If Janice Raymond was a pedophile, I can understand. If someone who's, like, very important to the gender critical movement or the anti-trans movement was a pedophile, I can understand bringing it up. But you went out of your way to find these really obscure people and be like, oh, look, these guys who I've gone out of my way to find did this research, but, like, that's not why I'm discrediting them. Well, it may not be why you're claiming you're discrediting them, but it's certainly why you found them. I think that's pretty obvious to anyone who's, you know, got half a brain cell. Oh, goodness me, I've got a really bad knot in my back. Yeah. Really need to get into it. So I use this thing. This is a little, like, roller thing. It doesn't really work right. I just kind of lean back on it. It mostly just... I will say with, like, massaging, sometimes I wonder whether or not massaging is a giant, like, psyop, where essentially it doesn't actually help. It's just that because it kind of makes the muscle hurt more temporarily, you feel like it's helped, because compared to the pain of being massaged, you know, like, basically... I think I've heard, like, people make a joke about this, where it's like you get massaged and when it's right on the knot, it really hurts. And then someone says, oh, doesn't that feel better? And it's like, well, yeah, when you stop it does, because anything feels better than what you were just doing. Anyway, yeah. I think it's fair to say this guy is poisoning the well. Hello, William Jerkins. And hello, Jew, or Deju. And oh yeah, I think there are a few more people here. Pathetic Girl, good to have you here. You sound, that's a lovely name. Yeah, but whatever. Well, the point is, this guy's saying, like, well, what I really have a problem with is their philosophy, but you haven't criticized their philosophy, so you're being disingenuous. Start criticizing their philosophy if that's what you want to do.
Sure, exactly what they wanted to accomplish with the study. There haven't been any follow-ups. Maybe Zucker got inspired by some of his colleagues to investigate paraphilias. There are some truly revolting studies by his buddy Ray Blanchard.
And I realized that we used to use these brief movie clips they were basically deteriorating too much. I just couldn't see continuing with them. So I wanted to go with photographs instead, but the still photographs, as I described to you, looking like medical textbook illustrations, they just weren't quite strong enough. So what I did was I wrote a series of stories. Each is about 54 seconds long. So if I'm showing you a photograph of an 8-year-old girl, you're hearing about a minute-long story about how you're interacting sexually with this 8-year-old girl.
Wait, okay. So is this Ray Blanchard saying this? Because that is all a bit sus. I will say that. What is this talking about? I don't think I care about this. Transfer deadline day. Oh. Cool.
If I show you a photograph of a 25-year-old man, along with that, you're hearing.
The manager is called Dick Advocate. That's his name. His name is Dick Advocate. I'm going to unnerve Dick Advocate. I'm going to do it. I'm unnerving Dick Advocate. There we go.
A story about sexual interaction with a 25-year-old man. So the two things together kind of beefed up response, and we were getting better results than we got with slide stimuli alone.
If I'm being totally honest, I don't have that much of a problem with this book. This one.
Oh, goodness me. So is this another poisoning the world thing? Like, you don't have much of a problem with it, but you just decided to include something that sounds really bad from it. That's very weird. I mean, it sounded weird, but again, like, my question, and I feel this guy's done this multiple times. Shown one very bad clip from some gender critical person. Again, I'm using, let's say, trans critical. Shown a clip or something from a trans critical person, and then be like, if I'm honest, I don't actually have very much to say about this. And it's like, okay, so the only thing you had to say about it then is that this person said something creepy. That's the only thing you had to say. So essentially your argument is, I found some people who are critical of transness and they said something creepy. That's it. That's the full extent of what you're saying. Great. Fantastic.
By the way, to me, it's so obviously ancient and outdated that it reads more as a piece of history than a relevant academic work. That is, I wouldn't have a problem with it if it wasn't still used today. God damn it. It's still one of the major works backing up the DSM-5. There are a handful of books from this era still being cited today as credible evidence for the low persistence rates. The most notable are these four. Money and Russo, 1979.
Homosexual outcome of discordant gender identity/role. Longitudinal follow-up.
Zucker and Bradley, 1995.
Gender identity disorder and psychosexual problems in children and adolescents.
Zucker, 1984.
Early effeminate behavior in boys. Outcome and significance for homosexuality.
And Green, the 1987...
The Sissy Boy Syndrome.
I've mentioned Green a couple of times. He's a lesser known entity in the space, most likely because he's dead. Lol. Anyways, he was the editor of Archives of Sexual Behavior before he handed it off to Zucker in the 2000s. But I want to focus specifically on his work, The Sissy Boy Syndrome, as the book is largely comprised of the recorded interviews.
Can I say this? It's very worth noting. Almost everything this guy's talking about has been dudes. I feel like a not tiny number of them have been gay dudes. And the reality is, look, if you're gay, that's fine. But there is an association between you look at like NAMBLA, it's man-boy love association, not man-girl love association, which would of course be fine. No, but yeah, like there is an association between homosexuality and pedophilia. That does not mean every single gay person is a pedophile. It just means there is an association. So that no one should have a problem with you saying that. But there also is, by the way, I would say, an association between being a dude and being a pedophile. Most of these people who are like pedophiles, they are dudes. It's significant that this guy is not showing any evidence of J.K. Rowling or anyone else being really like untoward on this point. So to me, it just seems like when a lot of the criticism of trans ideology is now coming from women, I just think you're being a little bit disingenuous by essentially saying, hey, did you know like a bunch of dudes? And like in any movement, you're going to be able to find a bunch of dudes who've done creepy stuff. Because while hashtag not all men, enough men that in a random group of dudes, if it gets big enough, you're going to start seeing some creepy guys. But yeah, it's just interesting to me that it's all just these dudes, and I'm not really that surprised that you're finding all these issues with them.
With the patients. Also, it's a wonderful name for a queer band, I guess. Of the original 44 patients who were diagnosed with gender identity disorder in childhood and who then subsequently were sent to treatment to prevent cross-dressing, only 12 were available for the follow-up. The book contains the full interviews with these 12. Only one person was labeled as an adult transsexual, so this is where the 2.2 persistence statistics come from. Cool! Right? Real cool. When you read the interviews, and I don't know if it's just me, but they are really sad. These kids enter into psychiatric care to get help, but the only help they get is Green telling them, no, you can't be a girl, and then he weirdly tries to lecture children on male and female sexual anatomy.
So, when you become married and you become a daddy?
Oh, goodness me. I don't know. I mean, it's something that's not entirely pointless to bring up to children, that there is a difference between males and females. I'm just so done with this. So far, so much of this has just been, this person, this random dude who was working with children as a doctor, specifically in dealing with these children who think they're the opposite sex from what they are. He had sexual conversations with kids. And it's like, on the one hand, yeah, that is gross. On the other hand, that's also not that surprising. So I just don't know where we're at with this. That's me though.
You'll help the mummy have a little baby, and that's why it's good to be a boy, and that's why it's good to have a penis. So you can help the mummy. She needs you.
What the fuck, Green? What the fuck are you on about? What? There's lots of talk of sexual fantasies and masturbation. It's weird, and it feels very intrusive. Anyways, while yes, most of these children grew up to be
It's also significant, by the way. Like, fuck this dickhead. It's significant that he said, 10 minutes ago, after having brought up a whole load of other of these random researchers who did all this creepy stuff, he was like, but let me be clear. I do not have a problem with the fact that they did all... he didn't say it. He said, this is not my main problem with them. This is not why I think they're wrong. The issue I have is with their main philosophy. So you're like, okay. So then he's going to start criticizing their main philosophy. And then what does he do? What does he do? He just immediately jumps into the exact same shit. It's just such a nonsense, obviously. It's the disingenuousness of it. If this video was called... Did you know that some people who are critical of trans ideology were creepy? Or something to that effect. Maybe it could even have a more clickbait title, like the dark side of the trans critical movement. It would still be a little bit disingenuous to act as if this is representative of it. But one, it's called Debunking Transphobia, which I don't even know. The issue is a lot of people don't even seem to be at transphobic. If anything, it's like they really love trans. You know what I'm saying? They really love trans people, especially the kids. I've kind of been taking it for granted that transphobia here just means people who are critical of trans ideology. He's not speaking about most of the criticisms that are made, but the actual other disingenuousness is that he keeps saying, oh, I'm going to bring up this person, I'm going to bring up something creepy they've done with kids or whatever, and then I'm going to tell you that doesn't really matter, and then I'm going to continue bringing up that stuff. It's just stupid.
Homosexual or bisexual.
Oh, by the way, I believe we're playing against a Premier League team, so we're probably going to lose this one. This is in a knockout cup. We're very unlikely to win this. I've kind of got to lock in because we're playing against Sunderland. If you know anything about football, Sunderland is a pretty good team. Not fantastic, but they're Premier League. Yeah, it's really disingenuous considering how many acclaimed gender critical women we have on the spot. No, yeah, exactly. It feels to me, and maybe this is just my particular bias, or my particular perspective, but most of the people I hear talking about this are women. I mean, obviously the bonus Patreon video we did was a debate between Helen Joyce, Helen Weberly, and a female moderator. And, like, it's mostly women talking about this, to be fair. That's why it's really hard. Like, I am laid low by the matriarchy. Nobody's, like, inviting me onto Times Radio so I can debate, because I'm not a woman.
There's a definite lingering shame permeating all of the stories. One of the fathers of the then children says, My worst fear is that
he'd be a homo or he'll be a... No, it's a funny thing. As I get older with the kid, I'm not so concerned with him. There are times with his relationship with certain guys, I'm wondering what the hell is going on.
Only then to acknowledge that the father himself has had prior experience with guys. Or another guy who got into an argument with his mother.
I don't give a shit. Like, you... It's so stupid. You're, like, defending trans ideology, and your argument is, did you know that one random dad who had a problem with it had a problem with his kid being gay, but it turns out he was secretly gay on the side? It's such a stupid... It's like, this is not an argument.
Mother asked me when I broke up with my girlfriend. She goes, now that this is over, do you think you'll be going back to it? And I said, my God, for 3 years and plus I've been straight. I haven't gone back to that or thought about even looking at it. I have made so many goddamn efforts, and I've changed my life for the better, and you guys still. Drop it, I said. Jesus Christ, can't you ever give me just a hug and a kiss and just praise me and say, I believe you?
Or how one
oh my God, shut up. You're not, like, that's so
so
entitled. Like, can't you just hug me and kiss me and tell me that I'm right about everything? Is that too much to ask? Holy shit, am I about to score against Sunderland? No, okay, they blocked it. But yeah. You're just being... That's actually an unreasonable thing to ask.
with a guy and his twin brother.
This guy wanted you to...
Like, the thing is, saying, like, oh, can't you just, like, hug me and, like, be kind of... That's all perfectly legitimate, but it's the... And then say, I believe you. Why would someone say that?
Fuck each other? Oh, he wanted to fuck both of you. He wanted my brother to fuck me, and no way, my brother was there and he said, yeah, I'll do it. Your brother was willing to do it? Yes,
What the hell is this? This is weird. Like, if anything, it's almost just as weird that this guy's bringing up all of these examples himself. Like, the amount this guy's talking about it, it starts to become creepy on his end after a point. Because I feel like a lot of the time whenever I, like, make videos and, like, something creepy comes up, and things, like, do come up that are kind of creepy, I always have that kind of thing of, like, I rush through it. Like, 'cause I think that, like, there have been moments where, you know, I've been talking about Foucault, or one of those, like, philosopher pedophiles, and there's, like, things I could bring up, and I think I always just say, oh, this guy did something creepy, but I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I say always. Again, this isn't even something I really touch on very much, but when I have, I very explicitly said, like, this is not something I'm comfortable talking about. The fact this guy's so obsessed with returning back to all this stuff, I don't know, it's a bit weird.
think he would fuck anything. I would starve and die before I would. He was up to it? Yeah, he was totally up to it. He was so pissed off at me. Why? Because he could have made $250. No way.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, okay, doing incest for two, like, that is way too low of a price. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that there is a price, but whatever the price is, it's not $250. Can we just all agree on that? You know, I'm sure most of you would agree there is no price. But I think we would also agree, all of us, that if there was a price, it is more than $250.
All these people ever got fully rid of their want to be women. One of them still has his moments. Another is afraid of being seen as too feminine. It sometimes seems that they are just suppressing it to the nth degree. But I don't know. I just want to ask again, why not just let these people be? Why force these children? Has it made their lives better? Of course, I have no idea. In 1987, sure, Green makes the argument that the surgeries are pretty bad, but now, if people are able, then why stop them? If it makes it a life worth living. Finally, Green also comments on another psychiatrist, George Rigas.
Sorry, if he kind of jumped from, like, people to, or children to people, like, why? Yeah, like, at the end of the day, if someone wants to get whatever cosmetic surgery, I think there can be a discussion about that, because obviously, you know, there are things we do stop people doing because we recognize it could be, like, you know, like people have a degree of we have a degree of like there's a duty of care to people who might not actually be as able to consent as they should be because they're not entirely in their right mind, and that does to some extent apply to cosmetic surgery. But whatever. There is a point at which you just say, you know what, if someone wants to do something, whatever. It's not the end of the world, who cares? But with children, it's very different. For obvious reasons, which I don't even think I need to or should need to explain.
And this one's interesting because Green outlines a major reaction he had to Rika's treatments. See, Rika didn't just try to prevent adult transsexualism, but also homosexuality.
I have even more difficulty with the moralistic basis that has recently revealed behind Rika's attempts to treat these children. That basis is described in his books Shaping Your Child's Sexual Identity and Growing Up Straight. The goal of the treatment is to promote real masculinity, which should be affirmed in every young man.
So
in
you'll
order
notice,
to
by the
prevent
way, this has like so. This is basically got nothing to do with the trans thing, and is totally like a pro-gender concept of, you know, we're going to make sure kids behave like real men. That's not like an anti-trans sentiment. Oh goodness me! Please don't go in. Please don't go in. Let's get this on then. Okay, whatever. Yeah, we're probably not going to win this. We'd be very unlikely. You know, we're not going to win the FA Cup on our first season. I'm sorry, guys.
them from being strongly tempted by their sexual perversions. Homosexuality is an unfortunate perversion and a manifestation of promiscuous and perverted sexual behavior.
I don't know if it's Wreckers or Reekers or how it's pronounced, but I can tell you what he does unequivocally. He is number one, a Baptist minister and a founding member of the Anti-Gay Family Research Council. We're familiar with them, of Tony Perkins fame. He's also a board member of an organization called NARTH. They basically espouse that gays can be fixed. They can turn straight. He's also a board member of the American College of Pediatricians, which is a shell group.
Like, look, if you wanted to make a video called Homophobia Debunked, make a video called Homophobia Debunked. But, like, it doesn't really... I don't really get what your criticism is here. Because what's this got to do with the trans thing?
Basically just wants to bring credibility to anti-gay distortions. He has a lucrative career going on as a witness against gay adoption in trials. He gets paid whether the adoption happens or not, sometimes as much as 60 grand for one trial appearance. This is the most important thing. He most recently has been caught with what is being called a rent boy,
who advertised himself as somebody with a, quote, smooth, sweet, tight ass. And a perfectly built 8-inch...
He's only... Oh, that's weird. I don't know. Like, me personally, and I know this is gonna... Like, maybe this is just my kind of traditional masculinity talking. It's always weird to me when I hear these gay guys, or like these closeted gay guys, and it's like they go for a guy with a big cock. Because I'm like, I don't know, like, in my head, I feel like if you're a closeted gay guy, you must care at least enough about your masculinity that you kind of got a sense of, you know, shame and awkwardness about it. And I would think, in my head, I'd be like, look, if I'm going to be a closeted gay guy, then at least when I'm going to then have sex with a dude, I would want that dude to have a small dick. So I feel just a little bit less gay. But I feel like maybe the logic is, you know, because as a kind of conservative, closeted gay guy, you don't have many opportunities to be secretly gay on the side. So it's kind of like if you then get the chance, you go all out. I can understand that. In a way, I can kind of respect it. So it's like, yeah, you don't just go, you go premium gay.
Uncut.
Now, if you don't remember, Rikas is the guy that Zucker cites extensively in his chapter on treatment. While Zucker has written critiques on Rika's scientific inconsistencies, it is Rika's approach to therapy Zucker defended when he wrote Elimination
of Peer Ostracism in Childhood, Treatment of Other Psychopathology, and Prevention of Transsexualism in Adulthood are so obviously clinically valid and consistent with the ethics of our time that they constitute sufficient justification for therapeutic intervention.
Right. I will say this. Okay, the thing is, like, there the criticism seemed to be, well, this guy had a load of, like, messed up beliefs, but someone else, like, defended him, and isn't that a problem? Here's the thing, I'll say this. There was that person who wrote, like, desist to something to trans, and, like, I think the upshot of that was, like, hey, you know, by doing, like, basic lifestyle stuff and things like that, you can address some of these psychological issues that might otherwise cause you to be trans. And that's something I would totally agree with. I think, like, if there's, like, a psychological issue with the whole trans thing, then... yeah, like basic kind of mental like health stuff, like going on a walk, having exercise, all that kind of stuff, yeah, it certainly does have a value to it, and I would agree with that. But then obviously in knowing that I would probably disagree with this woman on a lot of other stuff, you know, I would criticize that, but that's fine. Like, you can even say you agree with a specific person and yet still disagree with some aspects of their politics. That's my take, at least.
Treatment. Let's dig a little deeper into Rika's methodology for attempting to extinguish feminine behavior, shall we? This is one of his and Leibovitz's first major studies on gender incongruence, and just so you know, this specific study was referred to as a prime example of the treatment. Until recently, that is. The study centers around one child, pseudonym Craig, who's between 4 and 5 years old, as he's sent to treatment at UCLA for severe deviant behavior in the form of cross-dressing. Side note, this is the same place the children from Green's study were sent to. At first, Craig was videotaped during playtime at the clinic. I'll use masculine pronouns, by the way, as that was what he used later in life. These videotapes were distributed to a couple of observers who were to score the behavior as either masculine or feminine. When this clinical baseline was noted, Craig's mother was to note her child's behavior in the home and look for signs of femininity 4 times a day, 10 minutes at a time. And this was done throughout the procedure to see if the behavior got more tolerable. And what is feminine behavior? It's playing with girls, playing with female dolls, female role play, whether it be as an actress, mother, female teacher. And then for other feminine gestures, limp wrists, swishy hand, arm and torso movements, sway of hips, etc. Then for 1 hour, 3 times a week, the mother and the child was to come into the clinic. Each session was comprised of 3 10-minute playtimes where the child had a variety of toys to pick from the therapy table. The mother was to sit and read a book and only look up to give Craig attention if he was showing masculine behaviors. The mother was to wear earphones, allowing her to hear both her child and the experimenter, who would tell her when to
stop talking to him now, pick up the book, look away from him now.
Oh wow, it made him sound so creepy.
And when she followed the instructions, she would also be rewarded with words of affirmation.
Good. Great. That's what we want.
The mother was told that
we had great confidence in her ability to serve as Craig's primary therapist at home, which is the role she was in fact assigned. The mother was required to sign a written contract with the investigators that specified that continued treatment was contingent upon the mother's success in carrying out 2 instructions: to take reliable observational data in the home and to gain control over a non-gender related behavior.
To accomplish this, she was to give the child different types of poker chips depending on its behavior. A blue token meant TV time and candy bars. Red tokens meant no TV time, isolation in a corner, or physical punishment in the form of the father spanking the child.
The disobedient behavior did sharply decrease when the red tokens were backed up by spanking. Craig was told that he would get 1 swat from his father for each red token he collected. After collecting 2 swats in this manner for red tokens he had received while engaged in non-gender related behaviors, Craig carefully avoided receiving but a few red tokens from that time on, even though the treatment was to persist for more than half a year.
Zucker cites this specific study as a method of effective treatment on page 271. Actually, he cites Rika's extensively in the 1995 book. So extensively, in fact, that Rika's has the 3rd highest number of sources cited, only outmatched by John Money and Kenneth Zucker himself.
Wait, hold a minute. You just wait.
But
is that the first time he's mentioning John Money? I swear it's the first time he's mentioned John Money. Like, John Money is like a trans guy, so it's a bit weird to be like, oh, look at how terrible these guys are, and then to be like, oh, by the way, John Money, blah blah blah, and like you've just been talking about all these other people who are far less important to the anti-trans movement than John Money is to the pro-trans movement, and yeah, you just like just name drop him like he's nothing.
Right? Child abuse has no silver linings. We know today who the child, referred to as Craig in the study, was and what came of him. Content warning.
If you just want to skip this one,
That's
skip
totally
this
fine
one.
with me.
Craig was in reality named Kirk and was the middle child in a family of 5. Father, mother, an older brother, Kirk, and a younger sister.
Kirk's family had no idea George Reekers has, for the last 3 decades, used Kirk as an example of a child whose effeminate behavior was successfully altered. In numerous publications, Reekers has written about Kirk, calling him Craig to hide his identity.
What was described as 2 SWATs in the study was, in fact, not limited to SWATs. I'm just going to read parts of the article about it, okay? The family said the spankings were severe. The younger sister remembers
lots of.
I like how he's trying to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna read like small parts of the art, or like some little bits about the article because I don't want to get into it. But then like every available opportunity, it's like, let me tell you about how much these people were attracted to children, how sexy they thought the children were. It's kind of like you gotta pick a stance because you can't be like pretending that you're all about kind of decorum on this stuff.
Incidents.
She escaped the screaming by going to her bed to
lay in the room with my pillow on my head.
Later, she would go to Kirk's bedroom and
lay down and hug him. And we would just lay there, and the thing that I remember is that he never even showed anger. He was just numb.
During one particularly harsh punishment, their mother recalls her husband spanked Kirk
so hard that he had welts up and down his back and on his buttocks.
She remembers her oldest son saying,
"Try harder and he won't hit so hard."
She says, "Today,
it would be abuse."
I'm too distracted. Wait, I need to get up and walk around. I haven't sat down for too long. Oh, it's student's fate. I didn't realize I was doing that. That was not fan service or anything. That was just a natural consequence of my reading stretch. Sorry everyone. I think I must have got like I think subconsciously as I was playing the game, I was getting like more and more kind of just tense and let's get off camera. So I went into the bedroom and said to my wife, "Can you please drive this deep into my shoulder until it stops hurting?" But yeah, okay. Let's actually see. We're probably not going to win, but we do have a technically a chance to score right now. So we'll do a substitution, a last minute substitution. Wait, can I actually do like a 3 up front? Yeah, it's not really what I wanted, but I think I'll go for it anyway. Okay, so striker. Bring on another striker, Sinclair, lovely. And then left mid, left back, right back. Okay, so put the left back down there. And the send it back there. I don't know if he has any abilities up front, but whatever, we'll do it anyway. Alright. Okay, let's see if this does anything. It's not going to work. There's no way. Ugh. It's just, okay. So, this is it. This is what dreams are made of. We've got, essentially the question is, can we get the ball up front fast enough to... Nope. Ah, lost it. That's annoying. That's annoying. It's annoying that we had an opportunity to kind of... Whatever. Again, Sunderland is a Premier League team. We were going to... So, yeah, Capital One Cup, whatever. We got knocked out. That's not that surprising. I don't know if... I like this, but yeah. I don't know if it is my fault since English isn't my first language, but I'm not getting what point he is trying to make with all that information. Yeah, I think he basically... I think you've kind of summarized this entire video. That's actually a pretty good note to end on. Anyway. Yeah, we had some unfortunate misses, which sucks. Yeah, so that's it. So there was a goal only, yeah, 31 minutes in. Okay. Yeah. We did okay, but it's fine. You can't always win against Sunderland. Sunderland's a very good team. I would say, held our own. I mean, we had more possession than them. Yeah. Whatever. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't think they're going to be mad at me because I think we could have expected to lose to Sunderland.
Sometimes the older son would try to protect his brother to make his beatings less severe.
Okay, yeah, whatever. We're going to end this now. All right. Bye, everyone. I hope you have a good one, and I will see you all probably on Thursday. So yeah, bye, and thank you everyone for being here and hanging out, and give the stream a like because that is appreciated. And it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I love you. No, come on. What's it called? Parasocial relationship. Go. That's the thing people say. But no, yeah, I do appreciate you all here, and I think we've had a gay old time, but not too gay. Otherwise, that recast guy is gonna spank us and then try and hook up with us because of our tight arse and our 8-inch cock. All right, bye. I don't think that many people... It's kind of crazy, like, these dating profiles. I mean, not that I've seen that many, but I swear, like, every single time, like... Not every single... I mean, I swear, like, there's, like, a thing of, like, dating profiles about, yeah, I've got an 8-inch cock, and it's like... I don't know how many people out there actually have 8-inch cocks, but 8 inches is pretty big. I know, like, a woman already kind of... There was, like, a video where a woman demonstrated this. But that's 8 inches. 8 inches is the size of my head. So I'm just saying, I'm doubting it, personally. That's what I would be. That's what would offend me. You know, I'm going to be a homophobe, but primarily my criticism of gay guys is that they exaggerate the size of their cocks. All right. Bye, everyone. I'm just going to sit in silence for a moment because I know if I hit stop stream too early, it cuts off the end of the video.